Hello, everybody. Good to be with you again. I've been down with a cough and a cold, a bad cough and a bad cold, for about a month, so I have been unable to cut any videos. I have not missed sessions, but I've been coughing and spewing and everything else through every session that I've held, and it just didn't make any sense to, like make a permanent record of that and put it on YouTube. So here we are. This video is one that actually a friend of mine asked me to do, and so I'm going to do it for her, and because it makes a lot of sense. It goes along with a post that I wrote, and that about unit overwhelm, and I think it's going to be really helpful right now at this time in America. So, unit overwhelm is simply that which it's life, like just flooding it's life flooding the unit character with just a little bit too much, and it's usually, well, it can actually be the good things too. We can experience unit overwhelm over good stuff, but it's going to be hard to call that suffering. Although it might actually, it will, no, there's no might to it. We really enjoy that without mindfulness, then it's going to be, that's actually going to be the start of some suffering. But what we're talking about today is when life doesn't do what we want it to do, which is pretty much all the time, isn't it? I mean, the Fredness has got its preferences, and they are unmet daily. Yeah? And it's got its opinions, which no one's interested in. And it's got its positions and beliefs and all that stuff, all of which are hogwash to everybody but Fredness. Yes? There is the sense here that those things matter and that this is the center of the universe. I know better than this. I'm not trying to pretend like I don't, but I'm going to use myself as the example because it could still be true upon occasion. It's going to be pretty unusual, but it could still be true upon occasion. One of these things that life might do to us is it might cause an election to not turn out the way that we were looking forward to, or the way that we were hoping it would. So that there's a lot of, I can tell you, I've talked to many students in the last couple of weeks, and there's a lot of grief and a lot of anger and a lot of resistance out there, all of which are causing apparent individuals to suffer, and which are accomplishing nothing. Now, in and of themselves. Now, waking up does not make me stupid, and it doesn't make me passive. If Donald Trump wasn't my guy, then I've got every right to go out there and get in the street, do whatever I feel like doing. I can't not do what I do. So if this unit goes out in the street and starts protesting, it has not done so, but if it did, then I would be able to, then I'd be fine with it. That's the truth. Because these units do what they do. And life does what it does. That's what we got to recall. And I don't have anything to do actually with either one of them. Is that not weird? But see, there's no one at the wheel here, and this is not happening. This happening is not happening for somebody. It's not happening to somebody. It's just happening. So, what I'm hoping to be able to do is to address this unit overwhelm and help us see through it, because that's what's wrong. If we're in unit overwhelm, it's only because we know how things should be, and this ain't the way they are. Now, just notice that what we're really doing there is we're saying that what is should not be. I want you to notice that only an insane being would say that. Yeah? Really and truly. What is should not be. That is a position of insanity. Now, it's not lockable, uppable insanity, but it sure is deep insanity that's going to cause suffering for possibly for the lifetime of a unit, right? Which is overall that's not a big tragedy in terms of the universal, but on the relative level, it's just going to be a bitch. It's not what we. It's just it's just not gonna. It's not gonna be pleasant. See, I understand that there's no Fred. I get that just as well as anybody on the planet. There's no Fred. There's Fredness in the sense that there are these persistent, identifiable patterns, and there's no center to them or anything like that. I understand all that. That's not my experience. Not my experience in the sense that, I mean, actually, it is my experience, but my experience also, that's the way to put it, is that is my experience, but also is my experience is that there's a sense of Fred. There's a strong sense of Fred here. There's no Fred, but there's a sense of Fred. And, there were years where I thought I had to get rid of that sense of Fred. But who was it that thought it needed to get rid of the sense of Fred? The sense of Fred. I just got to off myself somehow. So the truth is that this sense of Fred can be a joy. It's hard to believe that, but it's true. How do I know that? Because this one used to be completely miserable, and now it is... I mean, I don't want to say I'm living an ecstatic electric life, but I'm living a quietly ecstatic life. That's the truth. So is Betsy. We're no better than our little dogs. We're just excited about everything. That's the truth. And we're jubilant. It's just stupid, really. If you're not with us here, we'd just be disgusting, because it's just more than you can stand. And so we keep it down around normies, around the muggles, if you will. So, but it's a beautiful thing to experience, and it's actually some facet of that is available to everybody. Doesn't mean we get. Nobody's going to get what I've got. Some people don't want it. Probably more people don't want it than do. But it's not what I've got, it's what is available to you, which is what? There's no me and you, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about the sense of you, the sense of the Bob or Susan or Tom or Carol that's listening to this video. There's one that thinks that felt like there was one that decided it was time to watch YouTube, that decided it was time to watch Fred, and did the little mouse thing, and boom, here we are. And that's the one I'm talking about. That's your experience. And when I say your experience, who am I talking to? I'm talking to divinity itself. Because there's not anything else. See, it's not like this experience is divine and this one isn't. There's only divinity. And there's only divine experience. It only happens within the divine, upon the divine. It is the divine. But that's not going to be any fun if I'm not pretending to be something that is enthralled with the majesty of my own divinity. So I'm pretending to be this thing. And I'm pretending to be that thing that's listening too. And I can't be said to not be those things because I'm oneness. So it's not like I'm not oneness exclusive to Fredness or Bobness. I'm oneness inclusive of Fredness and Bobness. But when I think, when the sense of Fred gets out of hand, and starts to thinking there really is a Fred. See, this is the thing. Gets to thinking there really is a Fred and that he should have his way. The first thing that that particular being is going to experience is that life is not his way, not going his way. Just can't. See, that Fred is Fred concept is actually resistance itself. Because in the absence of a Fred, what have I got? I don't know what it is, but I can't find a problem with it. I don't have any complaints about it. So the problem is not in our experience. It's in Fred's thinking about Fred's experience. And there's no Fred. So if there's no Fred, but there appears to be Fred's thinking, what are we talking about? Well, let's see. In the absence of a Fred, there's just this. It's just this. And what is this? This is conditioning. And what does conditioning do? It reacts with itself. We could say that conditioning is forever rising to meet circumstance. It's just like I got a handful of red buttons, right, that are all hooked up to, like electrifying palm things or whatever, and I got another handful over here, and this is the world. You know, why'd I do this? Because it feels so good when I quit. It's as good a reason as any, folks. So what I have to do is remember who the heck I am. Because, see, I'm not in the world. Not only am I not of the world, not in the world, but I'm not of the world either. I mean, Jesus said, you know, we are of the world, or in the world, but not of the world. But I'm telling you that he was just saying that to somebody who could understand that level of his teaching. Because we're not in the world. I'm not in the world. There's only one thing. So when I say we're, I'm just going to a relative thing as if there was a Fred and a you. But of course there's neither one of us. There's just this. But this idea that things should be other than the way they are is haunting. It's constantly haunting. It's not occasionally bothering us. It is the nature of the dream. The nature of the dream, the fundamental nature, the bedrock of the dream is that there's something wrong here. That's what the dream is. There's something wrong here. So which is not true in the absence of Fred. But we understand that we're not subtracting a Fred from what is. There ain't no Fred. So we don't have to pull a Fred out of this. We're just not putting a Fred into a scene where there's no Fred to begin with. There's no Fred. So I don't have to subtract a Fred. It is important, however, that I notice that there's no Fred. That I alertly notice that there's no Fred in this moment. And when I notice that, there's no problem. When I don't notice, it's just chock full of problems. But I want to touch on something. I want to go to something more practical. I even have some of this written down because in the post that I did, they're like bullet points. And I just knew I couldn't remember all those bullet points off the top of the head. So I wrote them down. If we are faced with a situation where we just can't stand it, then ultimately the thing to do is to notice who is it that can't stand it, right? But and that will be enough to unwind the whole thing if we can really see it. But what if we can't, right? I've had some students choking on their language the last couple of weeks when I would ask them, so Donald Trump shouldn't be president, is that true? And it's it is what it is. I mean, why resist it? It's going to be a hell of a show no matter what. That's all it is. It's a movie anyway. It's a movie for you. This isn't Fred's dream. Fred is the dream. What happens to Fred is completely secondary. It's not about Fred, it's about you. So, you, of course, meaning the divinity itself, right? Awakeness, oneness. When you know yourself as differentiation, you know yourself as oneness. When you know yourself as sameness, you know then we call that the void. And there's nothing wrong with the void. It's a great experience. I mean, it's not really a great experience because there's nothing to experience, and there's no one there to experience it. There is awareing going on, but there's nothing to be aware of. So we cannot say that awareness is there. It's just really just the potential. There's awareing, but if there's nothing to be aware of, then it's just void. See, void actually means empty. A lot of times it's just language that confuses us, right? It's like the language of one, the math of one, where we discover that oneness actually means one, right? And this is similar to that, is that void means void. And when you try to imagine that, first thing I want you to notice is that you can't. Because there's nothing in a void to imagine. But let's just say that we're bowled over because it's unit overwhelm. See this, who is it and all that? That's great thinking if we're alert to the situation. But how about if we're not alert to the situation and we're suffering? That's what this is all about. I mean, I can tell you that a whole lot of awake beings that I know got bowled over 2 weeks ago and with that election. I mean, I heard from them. They were suffering, and I get it. I stayed up all night, and I sent them a little healing email at 3:30 in the morning Eastern time when I saw that things were as they were. And because I thought, well, it's just going to be so much overwhelm out there. I need to come into this as a healer, right? And so I did my best. I did that. I put up that little post. I did another video, Living in the Absence of Should, which is a good one for you to watch. And I don't know, I did some other little things. In other words, I was just throwing my little 2 cents in there, so if anybody felt like, God almighty, I'm really suffering, and I'm going to take refuge in my spirituality, which is okay to do it in overwhelm, so then and they came to my website, they'd see, oh, okay, I really am home. This is okay. I'm understood and accepted here no matter what. You're also understood and accepted here if you're a Donald Trump supporter. There's no, my complaint with that faction of politics is simply that it appears to me that it's all about division. And I'm just not about division. I'm not about separation. They got these and these and these and these and these and these are good, these are bad. That's not what non-duality is all about. So that's my only thing there, is I just noticed that there's virtually a complete lack of skillfulness. As long as we're talking about separation, dividing this one from that one. There's only one thing going on. So is this part of oneness not so hot and that part of oneness really good? I don't think it works like that, folks. I just don't. It works like that from if you're a center. But in the absence of a center, for a centerless being, that's just simply not true. Sorry about the little camera work there. So if we are overwhelmed, then what we have to do is catch the fact that we're overwhelmed. And realize that when I start to scream, oh God, I'm just not awake anymore, that's a lie, right? You can't not be awake. You're awake. I don't care if you've had an awakening experience or not. You are awake. There's some of you, a lot of friends of mine, who know that they are awakeness, and there's a lot of friends of mine out there that don't. But you're awake either way. Because how do I know that? Because there's only awakeness. So you're awake either way. But if you are awake and you don't know it, then your experience is going to be identical to that of someone who is not awake. In other words, the experience of being awake and not knowing it is identical to the experience of not being awake. Awakening is just simply that we notice, oh, look at this, I'm already awake. How about that? And it's, you know, I mean, it can be that's the end result of it. I'll put it that way. That's the end result of it. So if we are overwhelmed, what are we going to do? So first we want to assess the situation. So let me get my bullet points. So in my post, this is what I asked. So can the problem be seen from the outside? And I remember very well, some of you have heard this story, but you're going to hear it again, and we hope it'll get something. You'll get something out of it this time. But I was sitting in my living room one day, and I was just bristling, right? I mean, it was just, this is in post-awakening, but I was not clear. And I'm just sitting there bristling about, I can't even remember what about. But I was not happy. And I was sitting in my living room, and I thought, but the scene was fine. If you looked at the scene, I mean, I was sitting in my favorite chair. I had a cup of tea and a book and a cat in my lap. I mean, a nice table lamp. What more could you possibly want out of life, right? I mean, that's it. I mean, it's a scene of total serenity and beauty, right? But that's what somebody would see from my front porch, looking in the window. They would say, "Well, look at that! What a life that guy's got." Because, see, the thing is, he can't, when he's looking, he's only looking at neutral truth. He can't see inside my head, which is where all of this is wrong. So, can the problem be spotted from the outside? And what I always do is I always go back to that scene. I think I'm sitting in that chair. If I got this problem and somebody's looking through the window, can they see that problem? No. No. So that begins to make us wonder if this problem is real or if it's just in our head. And I don't care if it's the fact that our mother's in the hospital dying. If it's not in our living room, what support am I being to her by falling apart in my living room? How about if I was just to find a way to accept that that's what is right now, but maybe she's not going to die, right? You know, and if she does die, am I going to say that what is shouldn't be? See, this is the craziest thing in the world. What is shouldn't be, isn't it? And that's what we just do over and over again. We don't spend any time in what is. We spend all of our time in trying to live in what ought to be. And that's where the suffering comes in. So if we can't spot it from the outside, then our situation is deeply suspicious. Can a problem be found here or anywhere, wherever you are at any time? Can you, right, including right now, try it right now. Why not? Why not actually do the exercise? So in the absence of a Fred, can you find a problem? For me, so in the absence of a Fred or a Bob or a Carol or Ted or whoever, can you find a problem right now? And remember, we're not removing a Fred. We're just not adding one where there's not one to begin with. There's no Fred. So I don't have to subtract what isn't there. I just have to notice that it's not there and tell myself the truth about that. Which is there's no Fred, just how much suffering do I want to do on his behalf? I can hear Willie out there starting to bark. Maybe we may have dog barking for the remainder of the video. I don't know. Maybe he'll behave. But he thinks he's behaving now. See, that's just exactly it. There's my opinion, is that Willie is not behaving because he's barking. But he was actually hired to be a dog. And dogs bark. So he's doing his job, man. He's a great little watchdog. And just that he's probably just not watching anything. He's probably just barking for the heck of it. So at any rate, we cannot find a problem in the absence of a center. That's what I mean when I say a Fred. I'm just talking about a center. See, if I don't have a Fred, I don't have a benchmark for the world. If I have a Fred here, then I know how things should be. They should be exactly like this unit wants them to be. And all of you should be kowtowing to me, and the weather should be exactly as I want it to be, and I should have all the money and all the girls, right? I mean, that's just the way it feels to me. And it's, but see, that's the problem is that we've got 7.2 billion other people with similar designs on the resources of our planet. There can't be that many sinners. Which one of us is right? None of us are right. There's no sinner. It only takes one belief to create a believer, and then I'm off to the races. And what's the first belief? I'm this body. I'm Fred. See, I got to make a Fred up, and as soon as I do, I begin to suffer from him. And I'll usually connect that Fred. I mean, I can just say, well, you know, maybe one of those people that's just going through mental torture, and I'm not really deeply associated with the body, but I'm really sold on the fact that I'm my mind. It can actually be easier to see through the fact that you're the body than it can be to see that you're not the mind. But you're not the mind. Find me a mind without the thoughts that are in it. Can you do that? Can you find a mind devoid of thoughts? Show it to me. That's what the old Zen master said. Show it to me. And I subscribe to his theory. I can't find a mind in the absence of thoughts. The only thing I can find is when I find thoughts, then I think they're arising within something other than actually me, right? I think there's a personality here that's got none of that's true. We'll go into that at other time. We have already gone into it ad nauseum, but we will probably continue to go into it because that's the way of the non-duality, is that it's a layered teaching. I had someone who's been brightly awake for over a year tell me the other day, "Oh my God, Fred, it's really true. Oh my God, what is it?" And she said, "I can't believe I heard you say this so many times, and I just couldn't really understand it, but I do now." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And she said, "Oh, repetition really is the mother of clarity." Seems so simple. But it's where you hear something 100 times, and the 101st, it lights you up, right? And you got to hear it the 100 before you can get lit up. That's the way it's working for you. Somebody else hear it the first time, right? And they're just lit up. I've got some people that I'm working with now that are less than a year. I was getting ready to say a year sober. Have been awake for less than a year, who are just incredibly clear. I mean, it's for less than a year. I'm not saying that we need to go, and get Adyashanti to retire and install them in his place, or me for that matter. But for where they are, it's unbelievable. I mean, they're where it took me years to get where they are. That's the truth. Now they have an advantage. They are standing on my shoulders, right? Said the sense of Fred. There's no teacher, just a teaching. There's no student, just a teaching. So, if we can't say that what is shouldn't be, and we can say that, but we can't say that without suffering. And see, that's the key here, is we're trying not to suffer. We're not trying to deny relativity. I mean, if I try to deny relativity, number one, I'm going to be constantly conflicting with my experience, right? Because my experience is relativity. Don't tell me what's real or not real. Tell me what I'm experiencing. That's what I'm really concerned with. What's real? Who knows? It's up for grabs. But what am I experiencing? That's my relative truth, and I don't want to deny it. I don't want to conflict with it. I don't want to deny my own experience. I don't want to be part of any philosophy that's denying my own experience. It's insanity. It is very high level insanity, because which is absolutism. But don't think that that's non-duality. It's not. That's absolutism. Absolutism is exclusive of relativity. Relativism is exclusive of the absolute, or actually of the universal. So call it universalism. But non-duality is seeing both things at the same time. They're both. It's seeing things as they really are. And things are not one-sided, like good or bad, right or wrong, black or white. So then I have to, if I'm stuck with this thing, and in other words, if I can't say that what isn't shouldn't be, then I got to ask my questions. Can I fix it? Can I? Well, there are lots of things that I can fix. This past election ain't one of them. Now, number one, I got to understand that there's nothing broken. There's nothing broken. There's nothing for me to fix. That's like not adding a Fred where there's not one. I'm coming in and I'm saying there's a problem where there's not one. But if my experience is that it's a problem, then I need to ask myself, can I fix this so-called problem? In this case, I would have to declare that I am 100% powerless. I had a vote. I voted. Everybody appreciated my vote, and then they told me it did not count. That's the truth. I'm from South Carolina. My vote went nowhere. But I got to cast it, you know. That's the best I could do. Can I, if I can't fix it, in other words, can I just change it in some way? Can I just make it better? Well, I'm going to suggest you can, but that it's an inside job. You got to go inside. So, if we can't fix it, we can't change it. Can you leave it? I'm not going to Canada. You know, I'm just not. I'm not leaving this. You know, if it all goes ugly, I'm going to die right here in South Carolina, folks. It's been a great run. That's fine. I'm content to go whenever this thing is taken. I really and truly am. So it would. There is the sense that I'm not ready for Betsy to be without Fred. See, I still got my little claws, and I still got my hooks in. But I won't have to worry about being around when Betsy's getting used to there not being a Fred around. Because I won't be here. See, I won't actually be here. I won't be suffering. Fredness will not be here. I will be here because I never go anywhere. I can't go anywhere. I'm it. I have no boundaries. I am boundless, and I am unborn. I am unbounded, and I am untouched by the ways of this world. That's the truth. So back to this thing. How about if I can't change it, leave it, fix it, am I going to kill the body over it? Nope. I'm just not going to. I remember years ago when I was ready to kill the body over its situation, but I discovered that I loved Betsy more than I hated my experience. I wanted her experience to be not as crummy as it could be. I'd already seen what happens when somebody commits suicide, and because her partner had done so 2 years before, and it's just a mess. It's so hard on everybody else, you know. It's just really it is done in the wrong way. It is just the final expression of resistance and selfishness. That's the truth. Done in the right way, it can be just fine. Like moving to Oregon and, you know, doing this lawful death with everybody engaged and informed and all that kind of stuff. That's quite a different thing. So, if I'm not going to kill the body, I can't fix it, I can't change it, I can't leave it, none of that stuff, what am I going to do? What about if I accept it? Now, let me tell you something. Fred Davis will never be able to accept life on life's terms. That's the truth. Fortunately, there is no Fred Davis. And in the absence of a belief in Fred Davis, I actually not only accept life's terms, I notice that I am life's terms. and I'm completely accepting of everything, I don't ask anything to change. Not one iota. Not the worst things that we think and not the best things that we think. I don't ask anything to change. I reign on the just and the unjust just alike. Right? There's no difference. So, what we have to do is this surrender is actually a dual process. Not only does because we're very accustomed to the notion of the unit bowing to awakeness, and I get, that's what we normally do. It's, I need to surrender to God, so to speak. And there can be a sense. Now remember the night that I surrendered to what is. Call it that. That's the truth. And it was in very short order that I woke up. But there was no Fred Davis there to surrender, so it's actually just sort of a play. But my experience was that I, Fred, surrendered. Just like it's my experience that I, Fred, have water in this cup and I'm going to drink it and this is free will. Within the context of the dream, there's free will and cause and effect and all of that for a dream character that isn't. Woo! But there's another aspect of surrender, and that's this fact that a awakeness has got to surrender to the unit. And you can do that by just noticing that the unit's in complete overwhelm and it doesn't affect you one bit. This idea that I'm not awake, that's a false being declaring that. That's a non-existent being declaring that. And if as awakeness you want to believe that, you can suffer on its behalf as much as you want, and as long as you want. But when you get to where you're no longer interested really in suffering, that's when you'll find yourself waking up. That's when you'll find, or at least that's where you first will find yourself moving strongly into spirituality. But you can stay there for a few lifetimes. Yeah? Or you can certainly stay there. And I can prove that you can stay there for decades because I work with people that have been there for decades all the time. If you get very, very desperate, you may even be willing to try what I do. Can you imagine that? What if I was telling you all this truth? How about that? Have you ever thought about that? What if I am telling you the truth? Woo! Wouldn't that be a different world? But even if you've tried what I do is on a momentary basis, a moment-to-moment basis. I have to be awake to this arising. I can't be awake to every arising I ever had prior to Donald Trump being elected. I got to be awake to the election and notice that what is. Right? I can't say it shouldn't be. I mean, I can say it, but I have to suffer terribly if I do. I mean, I can go out and I can be an activist and I can do everything I want to do, or I can, or I can curl up in a ball. I loved what David Brooks of the New York Times said. He said, we can't just throw up our hands and say that the country just isn't good enough for me anymore. God almighty. It was just like he put a bullet in my forehead when I read that. I loved that. I loved David Brooks anyway. But and he's a Republican, for God's sake, see? So what do I know? Just curling up in a ball is just no good. Betsy had a grandmother who turned her head to the wall and stayed there for years. I mean, they put her in an institution and all that. She turned her head to the wall. And that was that for a long, long time. You can do that too if you want. But you don't have to do that. And you don't have to wait until this thing subsides in order for you to be awake. You can't not be awake. You are awakeness. Do you want to tell yourself the truth about that or not? You're me. And I feel like this is just like an awakening session. Do you want to wake up to this or not? If you don't, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I really don't care. You do whatever you want to do. You can suffer. I mean, you have every right to suffer as long as you want. It appears to be insane from here, but that's only from here. Who knows? Life does what life does. Allow it to. These units do what they do. Allow them to. When they are unskillful, there is learning taking place. When they are skillful, there's still learning taking place. It's you can't have skillful without unskillful. You can't have unskillful without skillful. Here's the way of the world. But I don't want it to be like this. I don't want it to be this. I just want the good part. Good luck with that. Thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.